Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Tech CMO Talks. I'm your host, Connie, broadcasting live from the Netherlands. So, before I introduce our guest today, as I'm always curious where our audience joined us from. So, if you could use the comment section to tell us where you are joining us from today, let's get to know each other. So, our guest today is Erik Frieberg, a deeply respected marketing leader in the tech industry with extensive experience leading marketing and growth in many well-known software companies, including Puppet, VMware, and MongoDB. And currently, Erik is the Chief Marketing Officer at Solo.io. Hi, Erik. A very warm welcome to the show.
Great. It's great to be here today. And I won't type it in, but I'm joining from just south of San Francisco. So it's a nice semi-cloudy day today and looking forward to this.
So thank you so much for joining us today. So now we have some responses coming in and from many different countries of the world, UK, Turkey, Bulgaria, Israel, of course, in the US, Boston. So thank you all. Keep telling us where you're from. California, San Jose. So great. So a while ago, I had the opportunity to speak with Erik about product-led growth. And he explained to me that while Solo.io is not a SaaS company, they have a bottom-up go-to-market motion. And I find it a very relevant and interesting angle. And therefore, I invited him to share his story with us. I think in the simplest definition, product-led growth is simply to allow the end users to access your product without restriction so that they get to experience that. So I'm really excited and looking forward to the conversation today. Now, before I speak with Erik, I would like to tell you a little bit about Instruct because you will hear him mentioning Instruct in his talk. So Instruct is a virtual IT labs platform, and we enable software companies to generate demand at scale and accelerate product adoption and usage. They create hands-on product tours, demos, and training on real-world scenarios, real technology, and infrastructure using our lab environment. So it is not a simulation. You actually can provide your working product to your users to experience that. And because it is a browser-based solution, your users don't have to struggle with configuration or firewall issues. And because it is a sandbox environment, your users also can build confidence in using your product without worrying about the fact that they may break something. So it is a fantastic solution, and you will hear more from Erik later on. So I just want to explain to the audience that feel free to put in your comments and your questions. We will address that towards the end of this session. So, hi, Erik. Why don't we start by learning a little bit more about Solo.io?
Sure. No, happy to. Similarly, we're a company in the technology space. We really help organizations with their move to microservices and Kubernetes specifically. What we do is provide application networking in the form of two products. One is around Glue Edge, which is an API gateway, and the other is Glue Mesh, which is a service mesh. And what these products do is help you with the application networking or the communication between all of your microservices. And it really focuses on control and reliability and improving security and observability. We were founded in 2017. One of the key things is we're an open source as well as commercial product. And this really leads to this idea of kind of an open core with enterprise subscriptions. And then over the past year, we've been having, tremendous growth. And I think most importantly, our customers really like us. Our renewal rate is well over 98%. So pretty much everybody renews with us.
That's very impressive. And I understand you reach unicorn status within really a short time.
Yes, a lot of growth. So
Massive growth. Excellent. So maybe you can tell us the go-to-market strategies at solo.io.
sure. So as I mentioned, we're an open source company. What we do is we sell a subscription, and I think that's key versus a SaaS product. So we're not, in essence, a website you launch and give access to. We're selling a subscription. And so that's a real focus. And what we do is really lead with product-led and community-led. Right now, probably 80% of our sales we can track are kind of a bottoms-up product-led growth. And about 20% of them are more top-down initiatives that companies have around digital transformation or move to microservices. So that's really kind of the two big things for us.
Okay. And what does product-led growth mean at solo.io?
Yeah, you kind of mentioned this a minute ago. It really is around two things. One is showing people how they can solve critical problems they have. And the second is kind of demystifying it. But what I mean by showing them, it's not by telling them, it's by having them experience them for yourselves. I think many of us are in marketing and, we go out and buy different products in the marketplace. And there's just a huge difference when somebody is telling you how this tool works versus another person says, okay, let's do a 30-day trial and give you, hands-on access. Because when you get hands-on access, you're all of a sudden like, oh, wow, this is how this works. This is how this works. And it's sort of like you open the kimono when you get full access versus you're constantly wondering, I know you tell me this, but does the product really work this way? And all those gotchas they'll find out after you bought it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Great. And why do you focus on engaging with developers?
Yeah, I mean, we focus on the developers because they're really the users of our product. So more specifically, we go after developers and platform engineers and SREs because they're going to be hands-on. And as I mentioned, that's a majority of our marketing efforts. We still do messaging and campaigns to IT managers and further up the organization. But most of our PLG efforts are led right at the people who would be using our products. Or actually put better, the people who are experiencing the pains that we're trying to solve.
I see. So how does the buyer's journey look like then if you are focusing on the developers?
Yeah. So a lot of what we do is, in essence, messaging out to organizations about the pains we talked about. You're moving to microservices, you're struggling with security or connectivity or mean time to resolution with issues around observability. And we talk about the product offerings we have and how we can help you. And so by messaging directly to them, then they, in essence, come to our website and come into other places to learn more about our products and services.
Okay. And of course, when they want to learn more, they want to get hands-on, I guess.
Exactly. And it's a mix. Some are getting hands-on. Some are just looking for training to get skilled up. Probably like many people, we have a certain price point we sell into. Our average deal size is over 100,000. So not every person works at a company that can afford that. And that's fine with us because we have a lot of efforts. We'll probably talk more about this in the community side where we're educating and training people who, will never be, or at that moment aren't working at an organization that has problems of the scale that we can, that are economically viable for us to solve. It's a good way to put it. But they still want to learn about Kubernetes and Istio and the community and skill up and honestly get better jobs themselves. So they love to come to learn more about and get trained by us.
Mm-hmm. So from a marketing perspective, are you tracking like the signals when these people are going through maybe the learning process and when you think that they are ready to talk to sales?
Yeah, we do a lot of this. We have I think it's a relatively advanced scoring engine. So we're looking at all the signals where people come into our website, when they convert to anonymous and known, how they're interacting with us, how they're consuming content. And then, as you mentioned, further on, what educational things did they sign up for, be it workshops or some of our on-demand courses or things like that. So we try and do a good job of monitoring all that, as well as looking at documentation and things like that. All the signals that told me that, hey, you're in market and you're actively evaluating products.
Mm-hmm. And so in the sense that with the bottom-up approach, What are the indicators you use to assess like the success of that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we do all this scoring, and then what we do is score leads kind of on that traditional ABCD for environment and company fit, and 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of on activity. And then we send those over to sales, and then we do a good job of tracking like how they progress from a MQL to a sales accepted lead to initial meeting to pipeline and close one. And I have good metrics that show like coming into last quarter, 80% of the pipeline that sales was working on, all the net new pipeline was product-led growth generated. We had some others that weren't, but coming from other companies, if marketing can say we can directly track 80% of all marketing pipeline, I think that's a pretty high number.
Yes, definitely. I'm just wondering, maybe I have the wrong perception, but it seems like developers, they don't like to talk to sales. So is that the case?
I think it depends on the sale. What they are notorious for is, they don't pick up the phone, but they're actually happy to communicate. And if the interaction with the person is valuable, they're actually happy to talk to them. So we have both sales reps, and then we have a lot of field engineers. And I think our field engineers in particular bring a lot of value and help these people solve problems. So they come and they're happy to interact. We also have a Slack channel, both a community and a corporate one. And we get a lot of interaction on the Slack channel where different companies, they just talk about the issues they're having, or they post questions and they get the questions answered. And they don't care if it's a sales rep or a FE or, another person in the community. They're just like, oh my God, this is an amazing resource where when I have issues, the issues get answered.
Fantastic. So you mentioned at the beginning that you both have bottom-up and top-down go-to-market motions. So what are the challenges in running both at the same time within your organization?
Yeah, I think it's really around, I'll call it constraints. So without a doubt, I'm given my background and my technology, I kind of lean towards the product-led growth. But then as we are growing, we're hiring more sales reps, and I have a number of sales reps and others are like, hey, I need more messaging for the CIO, and I need this and this, and business impact. And it's not that those are wrong things. We've got to do those also. It just becomes, for a small marketing team, kind of a time constraint. And I also recognize we do win some deals where a company just has a digital transformation or a microservices initiative. And then what we have to do is convince them how we're going to help them with that overall initiative. So it's not necessarily a bottoms up technology driven. It is absolutely a top down. We've just seen more success with our bottoms up effort. And so we've just put a lot of effort there. But the top down, it definitely occurs without a doubt. And it's usually the best situations when they meet in the middle. You have a great story for the developer, and then you can help him show the value of what we're trying to do and why he's writing a check that's so big. And then they meet in the middle and everybody's happy.
Great. Yeah, I guess there's a lot of talk about the omni-channel engagement with your target audience in any case.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, the hardest thing is just, when you ask for all, we're getting 10 requests and, we can fulfill 3 of them. So we're like, okay, how do we prioritize? What do we focus on? What's delivering the most value? That's probably the toughest negotiation. Not that, some of the business level messaging is wrong. It's just like, okay, do you want a customer success story? Do you want business level messaging? Do we need more focus placed on here? There's, 7 things that we want to do, reps. How do you prioritize this? So,
Yeah. So let's take a moment also to talk about the community-led approach. It seems like a lot of organizations, companies are paying attention to the importance of communities. And coming from an open source background, you have a lot of experience with the community approach. So maybe you can share your perspective on that with us.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely with open source. In fact, we participate in multiple open source projects. Things like Istio and Envoy are broad community projects. We have our own Glue open source project. So a lot of efforts there. But I think the key to community is that your goals aren't around pipeline or sales or growing the business. They're around awareness and training and adoption and building a group of people who not only understand and use your technology, but then give back to the community. They help others. They'll contribute source code or other tools or other things. And so you sort of get this flywheel effect of, they are skilling up and they give back to the community itself. You just have to be clear as you're building these community efforts. The goal can't be pipeline. If your goal is pipeline, or it's just not going to be successful.
And I guess also more and more people trusted their peers, right, in recommending different tools. So it's also that element in it.
Yeah, they trust their peers, as well as this idea of they want to talk to people who have similar circumstances to themselves. And so if somebody's struggling with a particular issue around, let's just say, implementing certain types of security standards, if they can talk to somebody else who's already done this, it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I think a lot of the community building we do is around that. And even better, it's like we have organizations who not only give their knowledge, they'll like say, here's a set of code or functionality that it's not unique to our business. You might be a compliance standard, and they'll put that back in the open source project because they want others to benefit, because they feel, hey, I've added feature A. If somebody else gives B or C, in the long run, I'll be better off.
Great. Okay, then let's move on to another topic. So I understand that about a year ago, you started to reformulate your workshops, and maybe you can walk us through your journey, Erik.
Yeah. So our journey began about a year ago. It's progressed over a series of phases and deliverables. We started with hands-on workshops and progressed all the way through the launch of what we call Solo Academy last month. And we're still on this journey. And so you can see here is a set of phases. And what I thought I'd do is maybe just kind of jump into each of these and talk about what we did.
Yes, please.
So the first thing we did was we actually had a series of hands-on workshops already in progress. This is something we built out on Google and GCP. So we were using their infrastructure and building out these workshops. The problem really is it was honestly kind of labor intensive. The other issue you had is a lot of guessing. So let's say you were producing a webinar and you had 200 people sign up, or a hands-on workshop that 200 people had signed up for. That 200 people aren't going to show up. So maybe we guess 125. So then you spin up 125 environments. That takes time. That has costs. 135 people show up and you're like, I misguessed. I got to go fix that. And so, in essence, each workshop itself was kind of manually intensive. And so what we did is we stepped back and said, hey, there's got to be a better way can do this. And actually, you mentioned earlier, having come from Puppet, I'd experienced with Instruct at Puppet, and I was like, hey, you know what? We can automate this whole provisioning process. And not only can we automate it, it's on demand. So when 135 people show up for the workshop, we literally spin up 135 environments, instantaneously. The other issue you have in these environments when you're on a platform is shutting them down in a timely manner. It sounds great. You just spent 3 hours in a workshop. You're kind of tired, and maybe you don't shut down all the workshops right away, or you lose track of something. In essence, your clock is running, and you're running up a bill. So the great thing with Instruct is it allows us to spin down the workshops right away and save cost. But mostly, it works, and all the users of the environment just hey, they don't even know what's going on behind the scenes. They just log into a workshop. And we have about 6 of these different hands-on workshops, and they just have a great experience. And so that was kind of the first step of just automating that whole provisioning process.
Right.
And then for the next step,
so if I may just ask a question, Erik. So before using Instruct, how many resources do you need? How many people do you need in preparing the workshop environment?
Yeah, we probably had 2 to 3 people. And they would start preparing for a workshop 3 to 4 hours. I mean, I'll tell you, the workshop's focus was managing the environment. It was not on the experience of delivering great content. So you were kind of sweating it before the workshop, and how do I provision and set it up? And little things like we had a spreadsheet with 175 rows, 105 individual accounts and log. It was all that stuff. That's what you were worried about. And so in essence, all that went away. And so now you can start a workshop with literally probably 30 minutes notice and walk in, and then you focus on what do I need to do as an instructor, not what do I need to do as an administrator of an environment.
Well, that's a huge difference, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's like our first step was like a slice in the puzzle. And so once we got that automation down, we looked at and said, okay, what else can we do? How can we integrate and automate this across the board? And so we started to look at things like, okay, what is the presentation platform? We decided to go with this company called Livestorm that would help us with registration and presentation of the platform. We started to look at things like certification. So you talk about community. Well, one thing people like is to get certified. So Credly is an organization that allowed us to produce these Istio Foundation, different certifications at foundation level and expert level that people really can show when they promote. And they actually, when we issue these things, they post them on social media and say, look, I'm now certified in Istio at the expert level. And we also integrated things like SurveyMonkey to get feedback on our survey. So that automation of the infrastructure, what it really did is by lowering that down, it freed us up to spend a lot more time on the holistic experience that we have for all of these courses. So we could do more courses, deliver a better experience, and start to do things that before, honestly, we just didn't have time to do.
Yes. So from a marketing perspective, I see like you connected a lot of tools together. What do you want to achieve from this?
Yeah, for us, it's really two things. From an end user, they get a much better experience about how they register for it, how they log in and view and participate in the workshop, and then how they the follow-up from the workshop. It just is like a smooth experience. Behind the scenes, like I said, we had 3 people dedicated to this before, and we were doing 20% of what we were doing. Once we got rid of a lot of the infrastructure automation in place, we basically have 1.5, 2 people doing this, and we're doing 80% more work. And all this is also more integrated together. The data flows easily. You're not sitting there moving data around with spreadsheets. And the reps love it because they literally get notifications all the way from, hey, this account had 3 people register, to post-event. They can not only see the survey of what the person gave the course, but we've actually tacked on an environment survey, which we ask some questions about what the user's experience is with certain technologies. So, after having a great experience with us, they're happy to answer 6 or 7 questions, and you can look at this and say, hey, this account, they have 2 clusters, are not that big. Or, oh my God, look at these guys. They're 3 years into their journey. They've got 75 clusters. This is a great environment. You should be reaching out to these guys.
So it gives you a lot more data.
A lot more data and a lot more goodwill. People really appreciate the training that we delivered. It's all free. And so, again, it kind of goes back to, like you mentioned, like they don't like talking to reps. But if you've just been through a 3-hour training and you've got certified and they've done all this work, a lot more people are willing to respond to an email or ask a couple questions or participate in another event. It just creates a lot of just solid goodwill and brand awareness around what we're doing.
Great. Yeah, I see a lot of people posting like they got the badge, right, on the social media, and it really helps to increase brand awareness of the company.
Exactly. Yeah. We use another tool called Bamboo, which tracks social media impressions. And you could just see the avalanche of people. They get certified, they post it online. That post gets seen by many, many other people. And then those people come around and go, wow, my friend got certified. Maybe I should go check this out. And so the certifications turn into their own marketing machine.
Wow, that's really awesome. Because as a marketer, I think like the traditional way, you could offer some white paper, some case study ebook, advertise, send people to download, so you get some data who is interested in your product. But at the end of the day, are they interested or they just getting a white paper? And in comparison, now they experience your products hands-on. So there's really a much better approach in introducing people to your products.
Exactly. So,
And how do you bring people to the Solo Academy? Do you rely on organic traffic, or there are other activities, marketing perspective?
So let me explain Solo Kata a little bit more, because we kind of skipped over.
Yes.
We automated our workshops, but what we saw then was workshops are great, but let's say you're in EMEA and you want to attend a workshop, but you look online, you're like, oh my God, the workshop for Intro to Istio was just last week. There's not another workshop scheduled for 6 weeks out. And so what am I going to do for 5 weeks? Like, okay. And so we saw this opportunity to introduce more on-demand training. So if there wasn't a live workshop, and I personally believe a live workshop is a great experience, we can deliver you a hands-on, on-demand workshop where you can go to Solo Academy, you can sign up, and it's the exact same content that you can walk through. You just don't have as much guidance. And so that was the opportunity we saw with Solo Academy, is to introduce this on-demand training. If you go to the next slide, you can kind of see the experience here. We started using this company to develop SkillJar, to develop the environment. Actually, I think it's back one slide. There's a picture of the environment itself. Yeah, here it is. And so what we do is we deliver this environment where you mentioned Instruct is a browser-based infrastructure. So that's the screen on the left. We pop that up. We deliver all the training material on the right, and these windows are closable and resizable, and so the person reads through the step and guidance. And at the bottom, we provide kind of helpful hints, or if you're learning about MTLS, which stands for it's a mutual security standard, and you're like, I don't even know that much about it. We'll do a helpful hint to learn more about that, or provisioning or something else. And so we take that 4-hour course and we break it up into about 8 modules, and we deliver it online. The nice thing about this, though, is that you can start and do 3 modules for an hour and a half. You can take a break, you can come back to it. But again, it's the same exact experience as our live training. It's just delivered on demand now.
Great. So then I would like to ask the future plans with using Instruct.
Yeah, and so now that we've done lots of this, I'll call longer-based training, we've really seen kind of 2 opportunities. One is the doc team came to me and said, hey, we have a lot of code snippets in our documentation, and people see it, but it would be amazing if we could take that and actually enable somebody to launch an environment, take this code, and actually experience it for themselves, test it out in essence. Because that's another thing that we kind of glossed over, is that we can give you the software, but it takes you time to install it and set it up, and maybe you don't have the right environment. I came from a much larger company before, where we would do these kind of POCs, and it could take a company 2 weeks to set up the right environment to just test our software. And so what you're doing now with the on-demand environments is you're able to give somebody or enable them to test it out literally in minutes. So I partnered with the doc team, and so now we're enabling within portions of the doc somebody to spin up an Instruct environment, go look at the code, maybe try it out in the sample environment, see how you do and activate certain features in the product. It's just been, we've tested this out, and it's been great. And then based on that, we're like, okay, if we can do that, let's then take mini modules, because people often don't want to take a 4-hour course. They want to know, how do I implement MTLS, or how do I set up, rotating certificates in my infrastructure? So these are all super technical to our product, but they're challenges people run into every day. And we can set up an environment where they can try it out, and they're like, oh, I get it. I now understand all these little things. I understand how this works. I see this. And it's just illuminating to them. And so that's kind of the next 2 things is, really supercharge our doc, and then have mini modules for specific features or capabilities people are trying to learn about.
Great. I think it's a fantastic idea to have that available in your documentation, because very often people see a lot of text, but what exactly can they do with it, right? And immediately in that environment, they can already get hands-on. So that's fantastic. So then my last question will be about the ROI, right? You invest quite a lot in offering the education experience for your audience. And I see some very impressive metrics coming in from Solo Academy. So maybe we can also look at that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we kind of measure ROI in two different areas. I think one is the reduction in time and effort. I mean, that's actually not hard to measure. We can just literally look at our old AWS bills or GCP bills and compare that to the cost of Instruct and other tools. And that's easy. Like we almost justify it there. And then on the other side, then you look at just the impact it has on increasing awareness and brand and different types of engagement. And then just as a lead tool, because I think the other thing many of us struggle with in marketing is, when do you have gated or non-gated content on your site? And I think most people have kind of like a mini value calculator that the more value I give you, the more justified I am as about asking you about information, like, email address and things like that. And so I think there's no doubt that if I'm giving you a 2 or 3 hour hands-on workshop, I have I basically have to ask you. So, these have been tremendous contact acquisition activities for us. So it's easy to look at the number and the types of companies and people we're getting into the experience to see if it's worthwhile. So.
And apart from that, the NPS scores. So maybe we can take a look at that overview.
Yeah. So I put together some stats. You asked me, hey, how successful has this been? So like I said, we started back in May. And so just on the live workshops, we've delivered over 80 workshops. So if you think about ROI, I can give you a cost that used to cost to produce this and what's the cost now. And I can give you an impact right now there. We've had over 8,000 people participate in the program. And I mentioned, through different avenues, be it social, be it awareness, be it other things, we just have a significant increase in our brand awareness and differentiation against our competitors. And then the other aspect is something called NPS score. It's called Net Promoter Score. If you're not familiar with it, what we do at the end of the course is we ask you a simple question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend, this workshop to a friend? And if you get a 9 or a 10, you're called a promoter. And if you give a 0 to 6, you're called the detractor. And so you literally just take the number of promoters and you minus the detractors, and then you end up with an NPS score. And so our NPS score is 75. If you're not familiar with that, let me give you 2 brands you might be familiar with. So the iPhone and Apple are 67 and 68 respectively. And they're 2 of the most highest NPS score brands that exist. Southwest, which is an American Airlines, the most loved airline, is a 62. Netflix is a 54. So, I show people in my company this NPS score and give them context, and it's like, oh my God, this is like amazing.
Yeah, there you go. Very happy learners, happy customers.
Yeah, exactly. And I highly recommend it. It's an easy way to communicate with something that says, well, how do we know if these things are actually working? It's like, we ask them a simple question. It's based on a lot of research, and, it scored incredibly well.
Great. Okay, so I wonder if there are any questions from our audience. I guess, it is quite clear. A very, interesting story, I think, from the perspective on how do you engage with developers. So apart from that, also how you build a scalable developer education experience with the Solar Academy. So thanks for sharing this story with us. We got one person here.
Okay. What tools are we? So I can tell you that our infrastructure is a couple pieces together. Some of this was put in place before I joined Solo a year ago. But we use HubSpot for a lot of our marketing automation. It's a good tool that allows us to keep track of a lot of interactions. The sales reps use Salesforce. And then each of the other tools, be it Instruct or SkillJar or Credly or other things we use like SurveyMonkey, we've bring the data together and try and store as much as we can between HubSpot and Salesforce. Each of those tools have different pros and cons about tracking different types of activities. But they're good places to store this information. And then obviously, unfortunately, Google Sheets comes into the mix, and you end up exporting a lot of data and then doing some analysis there. So,
okay. And then we have another question.
Yeah, so for certification, like I said, there's a couple components to it. Like I said, one is I could go on for 20 minutes on this question, but I think I'll just highlight a couple of things I mentioned. One is, it's a slice of the piece, but it's important, which is the certificate, I'll call it authority. Credly is a great organization for us in our space that helps us create the certificates and then issue them, and they all kind of automate that entire process. So I can't recommend Credly high enough if you're going to create a certificate. It's important, though, in your area that you see other companies using Credly for certificates. They're probably the best known brand in the space. I think the other aspect to it is, though, you have to implement a testing environment in front of this. I'll give you an extreme. If you're asking 4 questions that are really simple, then the certificate doesn't have any value. We really ask about 25, 30 questions. And the questions are random, their answers are random, and you have to score 80% or higher. And, we actually have a decent fail rate, which actually is good because it shows people that, you just can't walk up, take the test, get the certificate. You actually have to know the domain experience. So what you're doing is really building trust that, hey, anybody who has a credential at a certain level has a certain level of skill set. So I think that's the other hidden aspect is that it's easy to say, oh, let's create a credential and let's go out and promote it and focus on the social media and everything else. But then very few people see value in it because you didn't spend the time to develop the training and implement the testing to actually make it worth something. How do we measure engagement? So for us, we measure engagement. To be very technical, we use actually a point system, 1 to 100. But what we're tracking is everything from your interactions with the website, your downloaded content, the workshops and experiences you're having, all the way through the whole cycle. And, like I said, even the documentation that you read. So we track all that. The other aspect of measuring engagement, there's measuring engagement and then there's scoring. So I could put a model in place, which I measure all this stuff, but what does it tell me? So then what you want to do is some statistical analysis about what are my weights and my scores geared towards? And this is another one we could talk for 20 minutes on minimum. When you do the scoring, you have to pick a success criteria. So am I scoring people to want to take a training, or am I scoring people to create pipeline, or am I, basically create opportunity, or am I scoring people for close one? And I can tell you that as you get more into this, there's huge arguments of, is the goal in marketing to create pipeline, or it's a goal in marketing to, close one business. But then you get different pros and cons about how much influence you have over, closing a pipeline. But in essence, that's what we do is, the simplest form is measure all the interactions that people have with you and then assign some type of value, which, emphasizes the type of activities that you want to emphasize. And I'll just give you one last specific example. We have people asking for pricing versus a trial. And I can tell you when somebody asks for pricing, that is a really high indicator. They are far down the sales cycle. It sounds, obvious when you say it, but I can tell you how many people might have a pricing white paper or understanding the value is the same as an introductory white paper. And you're like, oh, no. That one that talks about a framework for demonstrating value to your boss is, it should be 10x what the other white papers are. So you just want to find the things that are highly correlated to organizations that, create opportunities for you.
Okay, so thank you all for your questions as well. I think really great discussions. So before we go, just want to tell everyone that we're very excited that we will be at KubeCon Valencia. I know that Erik will be there too.
Yep.
So if you wonder about his tracks on Instruct, you can visit his booth actually and check that out if you happen to be there. Otherwise, come to the booth of Instruct. we'll have some hands-on test drive tracks for you to experience, instruct. And thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you again, Erik. And I hope to see you at the next event.
Yep. Well, thanks a lot. It was great talking to everybody today and really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.